A few days ago, I received a file from a journalist friend who teaches at a private university in Montevideo. I known this person for years now, and the exchange with her on our countless bar nights basically made me want to try to study journalism. After I started my career, we became even closer, and we shared concerns about the evolution of information, social media, and the infamous cerebral callosity we acquired to endure the tragedy. My friend, let's call her Valeria, was part of a public competition to accompany a minor scientific expedition to the Uruguayan Antarctic base. Her thesis was about investigating how information reception behaves in remote and isolated areas. I barely read it, but basically tries to show that information circulates and is received in a particular way in these circumstances by a group of unfamiliar people living under extreme climatic and isolation conditions, having as an example, life in submarines and in military bases in Siberia. The Antarctic base gave her the chance to observe some of her postulates up close. Finally, she was chosen and traveled with this scientific group in a commercial flight Montevideo, Santiago de Chile, to later arrive at Punta Arenas and fly to the Antarctic base. The last communication I had with her before she sent me the almost 90 photographic captures of the journal, was on March 15, 2024. We talked over the phone about how the weather was in Montevideo, that it does not stop raining and the cars are practically floating on the streets. She told me that the transport that was going to take them back was having mechanical problems and they would probably have to order spare parts for the plane from Punta Arenas. Then she told me that it is freaking cold down there and his colleagues are all very boring. Nobody has whiskey for the evenings. We laughed about that part because I told her to bring at least one bottle of grappa in her purse. Before saying goodbye, she told me they had spotted some old metal structures south of the base. The soldiers told her that it was safe to go near that part, so she was going to explore them. It wasn't there when they first arrived, and that the recent and atypical heat wave probably must have exposed it. I told her to be careful and we said goodbyes. 3 days later I received an email. Valeria shared a file with you. As I start to see what it was about, she calls me. Moro, can you hear me? She said in a nervous and excited voice. I can barely hear you, what happened? I asked, half asleep, while still lying on my bed. Listen to me carefully, don't talk, just listen. I could tell by her agitation that she was walking fast or maybe running. The creaking footsteps in the snow could be heard in the background. In the distance, a catastrophe-type siren was blaring. Are you all right? What happened? What's that noise? I said, now sitting on the edge of my bed. I sent you a file. Transfer it to a flash drive, delete history, and reset your cell phone, the computer and your email address. I'll explain everything later, it'll be worth it. What? What are you talking about, Vale? What for? Tell me what's going on, I started to yell at her, in slight panic. Listen, I found something that is not supposed to exist. In the diary he explains everything. I'm going back to the base, I think someone is following me, I set off an alarm or something. Save that file for me until I get there and remember that. There were 2 loud booms and the sound of water invading the transmission. A choked bubbling and cracking sound reminded me of ice collapsing. My friend had fallen into the water, in Antarctica. Hey, are you okay? What happened? I kept screaming hysterically until the call was cut off. I looked at my cell phone for a second. My hands were shaking. I tried calling several times but the phone went dead. I looked at the compressed file. I jumped up and ran to the dining room furniture, frantically looking for a white flash drive that had to be in a drawer somewhere. I couldn't find it, so I went back to my desk. I pulled the drawer so hard that it came off the rail and fell to the floor. I started to dig through my belongings on the floor, coins, papers, cards, nothing. I thought, I struggled to remember where I had fucking put it. Finally I saw my backpack peeking out from behind the desk chair. I jumped on it and in the second small pocket from the inside, there was a cheap white 16G flash drive. I put it in the PC, downloaded the file directly there, took it out and fabric restored the entire system on the computer. I do the same with my cell phone, as Valeria said. At the time I didn't even question if those measures really prevented me from being tracked, and the idea that that was the reason made panic run through my body like lightning. Sitting on the floor of my room next to the mess, my body was numb with tension. After a few seconds, I rebooted my cell phone to try to call Lucia, her sister. Hello. Lucia, it's that you? I think something bad happened to Vale. I hear her over the phone as if she fell into the water, and some rumbling. I don't know what I heard. I think she got into some trouble or some place she shouldn't have been. I realized that I was mumble and not saying anything clear. For some reason, I didn't mention the file. It can't be Moro, I just spoke to her on the phone. She was at the airport in Santiago de Chile at the boarding lounge. We talked for about half an hour. She told me she was bringing a fancy bourbon to share and I stopped listening. It didn't make sense. How could it be? What the fuck is going on? Moro, are you okay? Is something wrong? It's too early. Are you sure you didn't dream it? Did you talk to her half an hour ago? But, I exclaimed without being able to hide my confusion. Are you sure it was her? Yes, of course you moron, it's my sister. Did you smoke pot again on an empty stomach? No, you're right, never mind. Thanks Lucia, talk to you soon. I ended the call without letting her say goodbye. Had I dreamt about it? I erased everything now. How will I know if I dreamt it? I hesitated absurdly. This is surreal, I thought to myself as I looked at the flash drive in my hand. I refocused my attention and went to the attic looking for my brother's old laptop he left me before going to live in Spain. It was practically useless, but it was enough to see the file. I turned it on, waited for the decrepit Windows XP to load, and put the flash disk in, opened the compressed folder and found 2 files. Labnotes.pdf, personaldiary.pdf, I decided to open the journal first. From what I interpreted from the loading order of the screenshots, after reading it, I opened the image of the last page. I transcribe as is. Day 243 of the second mission 10:40 m. March 12, 2019. I am the head researcher of the psychological area at the UN Antarctic Base. I'm currently assigned to Project Sisyphus, categorized as the highest classified rank. This is going to sound crazy, but the person living with my family is my clone. It still surprises me when I say it out loud, but after being able to replicate the brain muscular history, a perfect copy of our memory, of any person, and having mastered replicating every cell of our bodies at any age, it was only a matter of time before the development of social biotechnology would emerge. Now, and by worldwide agreement, as a complete secret. There is absolutely no shame or a shred of ethics in what we do. There is no longer any constraint on what we can do to the subjects for the sake of research. That haunts me every day. It all went to shit so fast, I doubt anyone will come to our rescue. The protocol says so. The base, in the face of an imminent security risk, will erase itself. The structure was designed to collapse methodically following a protocol of incineration and sinking. The immediate perimeter has underwater mines that make the ice collapse almost imperceptibly, but deadly to anyone who tries to leave. No one can escape from the base, neither the research staff nor the subjects. Our place in the world is already taken. I only hope that this journal, along with my lab notes, will be found at some point. I managed to construct a small insulating gasket for it, so I trust it will survive in case this part of the building collapses as well. Please use this data to let the world know what happened here, and don't let perversity define us once again. To my family, I love you and miss you every minute. B. At the exact moment I ended the reading, I received a video call that made me jump with fright. It is Valeria. With my pulse shaking, I answered the call. Hi you. The flight was delayed, can you believe it? This one is absolutely in my top 3 worst trips of my life. I'm really hungry and everything is so expensive here. What are you up to? Tell me something, please, I'm so bored. I looked at her with confusion and I couldn't manage to pronounce words. When I was about to modulate an answer, she interrupted me. What's the matter, Moro? Are you on pause? Is the signal okay? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you see me? She started to walk through the boarding lounge looking for better signal. Yes, Valeria, I can hear you. She laughed and looked at me with a face between sensual and serious, and continued. Do you miss me? While raising the phone jokingly, as she typically does in her selfie pose. Valeria, don't you remember calling me earlier today? I called you. NOP. Why? By the way, did you know there are penguins in Tierra del Fuego? I would have liked to go and see them. She continued his verbose conversation in a carefree tone, with her typical hand gestures and playing with his hair. Well, at last. She interrupted herself and shouted, jumping up from her chair. "We are being called to board, see you in a couple hours." She said goodbye with a smiling sonority, and began to walk towards the boarding gate. But at the last second, before ending the call, her gesture changed. She looked directly at the camera with a hardened and emotionless face, and almost mechanically, she whispered, "I'm going to retrieve that diary." My stomach dropped to the floor and I could feel as if my blood was running cold with fear. I could not shake the awful and eerie feeling that this person, who was returning, whom I had never in my life called by her full name, was not my friend. So, the next couple of hours I put everything in to transcribe the rest of important passages of the diary. Something was compelling me to do it, I can't explain it, some mix between moral duty and morbid curiosity. Here is my selection of it. Lab Notes. Day 96 of First Mission, 8 a.m. December 22, 2016. Subject John X012. First physical assessments, normal, alert, and inquisitive, exhibits some alteration to screens. We place 100 cubic centimeters of sedative in room air. The subject attentively follows the narrative of Scenario B5, the last mission. The subject responds positively to the premises of the story, where he is asked to address an audience threatened by a natural disaster, convincing them to choose a certain path out of the city. He offers to collaborate but fails to articulate the message with the power to overcome the simulation. We resort to pouring 125 cubic centimeters of concentrated psilocybin into the air as stipulated in the protocol sheet. The vocal frequency and body language reading receptors in the observation room are activated. The subject manages to formulate a series of premises articulately and with discursive power, circulating around the observation room. Successful reaction. We move on to the next stage. Case is filed under the label Jobs Project. Diary entry, Day 96 of the First Mission, 21:30 p.m. December 22, 2016. Today they transferred subject John X0012 for psychological evaluation. Several in the lab were very anxious about this arrival. I was never the religious type, but I can understand why. Truth be told, I always imagined Jesus would be taller. Day 106 of the First Mission, 8 a.m. January 2, 2017. Today we received a new lab assistant for the night shift. Much needed, as I was covering these shifts myself and am really burned out. The underground operates at full power at those hours. The hum of the machinery becomes unbearable. This must be why the rooms have an insulating structure. Day 112 of the First Mission, 1900 hours p.m. January 8, 2017. The new integration is not very bright. He labeled the transcripts wrong again yesterday and doesn't seem to fully understand the importance of these. I'm going to have to go through the whole method with him again. I don't have much patience lately. It's not his fault. He seems like a nice guy and it's real that I need a second of confidence. Better train him from now on. Maybe start a sketch of a short explanatory document. Small introductory guide. When the subjects conclude the incubation and breeding process, pages 19 to 52 of the manual, that is to say, that they have at least remembered speech and with it, depending on the time in which they lived, reading and writing, they generally begin to perceive themselves. Just before situational curiosity is when the psychology department comes into action, either to run the standby simulation or the main tests. In each subject's file is the target of their cloning, the era in which they lived, and the recommended scenarios to trigger the desired response. If the file has X amount on the cover, this corresponds to the generation of the subject, whether it is the first or 10th time it is incubated. Generally, it takes between 2 and 5 attempts to generate the correct simulation, and administer the appropriate drugs. It took 5 attempts to come up with the correct amount of methamphetamine that subject AX005, Hitler, needed to function in the scenario, as the correct amount bordered on overdose. Simulations are much easier since the implementation of multi-sensor AI. We managed to generate almost any scenario including temperature, smells, lights and sounds. We tried not to use familiar ones, as human smells are impossible to replicate. We found this out in a complicated way. We tried to recreate a conversation between RR subject X003, Reagan, and his mother, but he recognized the fakery by the absence of body odor. His mind collapsed and we had to move him to the underground. The people in Area C, private clients, almost lost a very large Chinese account. After calibrating the subject, we ran both psychological and behavioral tests, scanned retinas, analyzed blood, as well as vocal and body language. But what has really yielded surprising results are the free interviews. It is amazing what some minds are capable of with the right environmental and chemical stimulation. That's why transcription is vital. Our area develops BC, behavioral algorithms, which are then bought by the private sector, and some government agencies. To give you some examples, Twitter was an idea of subject Joe X008, Orwell. Bots in social media and the use of big data was an idea of JGX002, Goebbels, and KMX014's worst nightmare, Marx, was bought by Amazon. It is an arduous process and the success rate is low, but when we achieve the goal per subject, well, these results are a main part of the latest revolutions of mankind. So follow the lab rules, never refer to subjects by their actual historical name, and always remember, they are assets, not people. Day 117 of the first mission, 16:30 a.m. January 12, 2017. Today is a rest day all over Area D. I miss many things from the old world that I thought I would never miss: taking a bus, standing in line with strangers, and today I miss Sundays. We only have one on the month. So as usual we gather in the rest area to listen to a liberated jukebox that tries to lighten the mood. I know, right? Why I wrote about this Saturday photocopy, well, besides the same nostalgic drunks, I was approached by a person I didn't recognize. From what I understood, he was a rehabilitated alcoholic, maybe that's why I didn't see him on Saturdays. He must be in his 50s, he was portly and wore thick black-rimmed glasses, he seemed to have a slight limp, I noticed it when he went to refill my beer. I am a very reserved person and find it hard to talk to people. Truth be told, I've lost the desire to talk to people here. What can you actually fucking talk about here, if it's not about the same thing? Everything revolves around work and some inter-area gossip, which never escalates much. But yesterday was Clara's birthday, and to hide the remorse and sadness of only having shared with her the first 3 years of her life, I had a few too many beers. We chatted about banal aspects of life in isolation, and the things we miss. For him it was going to the stadium to watch soccer with his grandchildren. I think it was loneliness and nostalgia that brought us together that night. His name was Siegfried, I don't know if I spelled it right, but it was clearly Nordic, I notice because of some of the words he mixed up with English. He works as the underground level security manager. We all know that it is one of the most restricted areas, and what we have learned in these almost 10 years in the project, is that the more restricted, the less questions you should ask. But that day, I think I felt the urge to hurt myself, to go off the rails, so I asked what we all suspected but no one knew for sure. I asked about the blenders. I wish I hadn't. Day 126 of the first mission, 8 a.m. January 21, 2017. I almost can't express how furious I am today, but I'm going to try, because if I don't, I'm going to punch the new assistant in the face. He has nothing to do with this, he's just mildly irritating. Anyway, in genetic mapping or Area A, they approved the incubation of another anomaly. It seems to be an express request from a major shareholder, and there is not much to say. Anomalies are very risky to reproduce, nature is wise, and for some reason it placed them in history moments where they had their limitations. It seems that after the crisis of 2010 with the Russian devil, it is no longer scary enough. New school morons. If they had been there, they wouldn't even dare to think about it. I am furious. The arguments are that this case lived longer, that the clone would be in his 70s, and that he possessed noticeably more civilized traits. As if the court of the last Tsar had not been somewhat civilized. Personally, I think this is a big mistake. Since the discovery that some people possess unknown DNA components, and with the 2010 background, they should draw the line. There are certain things, still beyond our ability to understand. But it is delusional of me to think that there are limits, someday the absence of them will consume us all. Lab Notes, Day 142 of First Mission, 8 a.m. February 6, 2017. Final free interview with John, Subject X012. Scenario B24 or the dinner party. Result, normal. Notes, subject is grateful, positive, docile, and hopeful for the future. Offers to cook next time by asking for spices and ingredients of typical Hindu dishes. The subject is directed to the underground area. Attached audio for transcription. Case is filed under the label Jobs Project. Day 142 of the first mission, 2100 hours PM, February 6, 2017. Today was the last session with subject John X012. I managed to extract the last retinal and body language readings, as usual, before sending them to underground level. We ran the dinner scenario. The truth is that is one of the best simulations we have achieved. The subjects are relaxed, resulting in the best free interview environment. This one was no exception. I must say I understand the charm of the Messiah turned out to be quite an entertaining subject. I hope his next generation will be similar. Day 152 of the first mission, 1900 hours PM, February 16, 2017. I was tasked with the continuous monitoring of subject NTX004. I am not at all happy with this transfer. First of all, I know nothing about Area B of Engineering and Technology. Secondly, I still think this is a really bad idea. One of the laboratories has been set up with the essential simulation equipment and personnel. Tomorrow we start with the calibration. Lab notes, day 153 of the first mission, 8 AM, February 17, 2017. First interview with subject NTX004, we run simulation scenario 54A, signal from another planet. Subject is observed to be receptive at first but quickly changes to paranoid. We administer 300 cubic centimeters of MDMA via air, according to protocol. We introduce the reconstructed figure of a colleague in a cry for help speech. The subject laughs and doesn't believe a word. We move to a physical approach plane. I volunteer myself with the room operator from the engineering area. We show him unfinished plans of an experimental vacuum propulsion engine. He laughs again and tells us that we are not who we say we are. We administer 50 cubic centimeters of DMT and move on to the next scenario. From the screen, an astronaut with non-human features sends a distress signal and intergalactic coordinates. The subject looks thoughtful, reassesses, picks up the blueprints and begins to shout out values and what appears to be mathematical and physical formulas. Air is charged with percentages of absolute sedation. Audio recording is attached. It is filed under the name Project SpaceX. Day 153 of the first mission, 2100 hours PM, February 17, 2017. I'm not sure what happened today. This is the first time in 10 years that a subject overcame the deception of 3 simulations. We had to place absolute sedation in the air, as risky as we know it is. I recommended that we restart the process from scratch, but it was a resounding no. The client is in a hurry. I need to get more involved in this case to recalibrate the subject. I don't know if I want to. The words before full sedation still resonate with me. Are you still using DC current? Interesting. Day 154 of the first mission, 2100 hours PM, February 18, 2017. Something happened, I don't quite know what. The rooms have an emergency lockdown active. Outside here, security personnel mobilizing. I tried the intercom but it didn't work. The insulation prevents my screams from being heard from the outside. If this goes on another day, I'm going to break the lock. I'm going to set my backpack to the bare minimum. Day 157 of the first mission, 2100 hours PM, February 21st, 2017. Yesterday I heard explosions in the B area. I couldn't take it anymore and broke the lock. Whatever it was, I had to go out and see. The corridors were dark, and the underground buzzer went on. At least that worked. I went right to the north staircase, down the 4 floors in near darkness. The power was failing. The entrance to the underground area was barricaded, but I managed to see a figure peeking out from inside as they felt me making noises. It was Siegfried. He pointed me in the door's direction and I entered through a heavily armored side door. I was surprised by the immensity of this section. It encompassed a large hall below almost all the sectors of the base. In front of us there were 4 large industrial pipes with switches and multiple smaller pipes coming out of their bases. These were repeated like mosaics throughout the area until they disappeared into the distance in the darkness. Leaning against one of them were 3 officers in formerly white coats and a nearly dead guard bloodied on the floor. Poor guy, his legs were crushed with his flesh in the open. He was lying in a pool of his own blood. He had a blank stare and was panting. It seemed from the pale of his skin that his fate was imminent. My asthma began to pound in my chest sharply, so I reached into my bag looking for my inhaler. I told them between visible gasps of bad breath to please tell me what's happened. One of the doctors had a badge from Area B and another from Area E, which corresponds to bioarmamentistics. The latter burst into tears and said, "We deserve it, every one of us, we deserve it." I knew the other guy. He is an engineer in Area B. I could hear him babbling almost nonsensically about, as why they never thought about it, an issue with electrical power. He looked at me carefully as if recognizing me and grabbed me tightly by my jacket, pulling me close to his face transformed for the panic. He let them out, all of them, but not only that, no. He told them the truth. Nikola fucking Tesla hacked us and told them the truth. He began to laugh frantically with a face of absurdity until he burst into a choked cry. At that moment everything went dark. The emergency lights activated, and from far away and getting closer, along with the emergency sirens that began to sound, we heard a large mass of people screaming and running through the corridors outside. Siegfried looked at me as they started to pound on the shielded door and said, "We're fucked." Day XX of the second mission, month XX of 2017. The industrial sounds of spinning blades, the cries for mercy followed by the thunderous, liquid crack, down that big pipe, into the green barrels, with the Monsanto logo, dripped down one side an elongated drop of pink paste ending in the letter E on the chemical label. Fertilizer. After finishing the transcription, my whole body began to want to flee. The walls of my house were tinged with a faint blue light as the cloudy dusk came through the window. The lights turned off by my abstraction at the computer gave way to the dark corridors that began to feel alien. As I gently closed the PC, my ears began to ring as if under pressure. my breathing became more present and the vibration of my cell phone interrupted my trance. A call from the office. It was to tell me that I had a vacation week pending, that by schedule, I had to take it starting today. Sons of bitches, now they even choose your time off, I thought at first, but at the same time I found the voice on the phone very strange, and to tell the truth, the procedure itself. The anger turned into confusion that only added to the paranoia. The sounds in the street began to seem erratic, a chaotic, and strangely familiar feeling came over me. My senses seemed increasingly acute, and they screamed, "Go away." I grabbed the old laptop, the flash drive and headed for the bus station. The short trip from my house seemed like a long journey. People on the street looked at me with strange faces, the cell phone kept ringing with unknown numbers on the screen and a strange idea began to formulate in my head that whispered them, "Valeria is one of them." Already on the platforms I rummaged through my backpack where I confirmed that I had the key to the family beach house in San Luis, 60 kilometers to the east of Montevideo. I turned off my cell phone, got on a bus heading to another and much far away town called Treinta y Tres. Sat near the last seat and slipped my cell phone in my front pocket of the seat in front of me, got off and commented to the driver with a clueless face, "I got confused, I'm going to the coast." I almost jumped onto the steps of the correct bus to where I was heading, unable to avoid the gazes of the passengers questioning me for the last-minute drop-in. I sat in my numbered seat and defragmented in dissociation, trying to understand what I was doing. I was running away, but from what? The images of the last transcriptions were engraved in my mind. The last paragraph was repeated over and over again, making me shake my head from time to time, trying to get them away from my thoughts. The road was dark and I lost track of time, the digital clock within sight of the passengers jingling since we left, reading 10:40. San Luis Station. I heard the guards shout in low volume. I staggered to my feet, hurried to get off, and with the same impulse I entered the dirt roads. I zigzagged through the dark, cold, and silent beach town. The moonless night and the smell of the sea calmed me. When I turned the corner to the gabled beach house of my family, on the steps of the front door lit by a white light, was her. Sitting, waiting for me. I stopped dead in my tracks and a chilling vertigo ran down my torso to my throat. We looked at each other for a short 2 seconds, until she stopped and started walking in sliding steps towards me, smiling and playing with her hands, crossing and uncrossing her arms. The growing sound of the wind through the trees covered us. "Darling, how are you? How nice is the summer house? I don't think we ever came here, did we? Is it the one your grandmother left you?" I felt the adrenaline rushing through my bloodstream. How could such a familiar attitude from such a familiar person transmit such panic to me? I had to answer something. "Yes, this is it." I came to clear my head for a while. They gave me a few days at work and I wanted to take advantage of it. I tried to excuse myself with failed dissimulation, since I stuttered in the middle of the words. "Yes, I know. We arranged it with them, so you can be more relaxed and as a gesture for taking care of the file. Ah, and another thing. I think someone stole your cell phone at the bus station. She looked at me with a smart-ass smile. Anyway, don't worry, they already found it on a bus on the way to train to Whitetrace. You can get it back later. At this point I opened my mouth to ask for explanations, but as terrified as I was, I only mumbled a thank you. All this dialogue led us half a body length away. Valeria looked at me now a little more serious and stood at my side. She took my arm petrified, and I could feel how a strong smell of neutral soap invaded me, as if she had rubbed herself in it too much. "Shall we go inside? It's getting cold," she said, finishing the sentence with a sweet gesture of pleading. Sure," I said. My trembling hands managed to hit the lock on the third attempt. We entered, turned on the lights, and from his backpack she took out a red wine. "Our favorite. Bring me some glasses, Moro," she said to me as she sat down on the armchair against the window overlooking the gentle hills outside. She poured wine until he almost filled the ex-cottage cheese glass, looked at me, and in a toast gesture said, "To Dr. B." I slid a little smile and raised my eyebrows. Then I took half a glass in one sip. "Well," she exclaimed, leaning over and resting the glass on the coffee table, and continued, "You must be very confused. I understand. I saw it many times, the mind trying to adapt to a new, unsuspected reality, and in your case all at once. It is not easy. First, make sure that no one is going to hurt you or anyone you know. Second, what you read in that file, as you may have noticed, is not intended for public knowledge. Also, to tell you, I couldn't take the stress anymore," I exploded. "You're not Vale. Who are you? You're almost identical, but..." "Ah yes, that one. It's a tricky one to explain. Let's try, let's see. I'm a version of Valeria that she accidentally gendered when entered the lab. In one of the incubation rooms she touched a scan button that photographs her mind for 48 hours. It contains a microneedle that took her blood and thus generated me. The thing is that we were in a situation of self-destruction of the systems, and that part of the programming code of the protocol was also copied in Valeria's mind. And Valeria? She's dead. Well, yes, and no. If she tried to leave the base, she's probably dead. If she's still there, she's probably frozen to death or killed by the cleanup command, but basically, if I'm here, she's not anymore." The coldness with which she answered me made me lose the little calm I had. I got up from the armchair and started to back away with my hands on my head. I couldn't stop repeating, "This can't be happening, this can't be happening." "Hey, Moro, calm down, it's going to be all right. I'm Valeria too. In every way, I'm still your friend. I know who you are and everything we went through. Really, it's me, and when I finish managing the leak, the code, it won't work anymore, it will be erased from my mind and I'll be me. So don't worry. You only have to give me the flash disk and this issue ends here. We go back to normal life and nobody will know about anything." I'm not going to pretend that my friend didn't die. Alone, fucking freezing to death. I'm not going to let you take her place. I'm not going to let you. She interrupted me. Moro, listen to me. She came closer to me and grabbed my hands, her big, lined eyes looking at me with sweetness, like so many times before. I am Valeria, I have the same fingerprints, the same blood, the same DNA, the same memories, the same scars, absolutely everything. Are you going to tell my mother that I died? To my sister? Are you going to report me? Nobody is going to believe you at all. If anyone even wants to believe you, how would you prove it? I am an exact copy. She told me, smiling with real sweetness and empathy. I could only cry, for my friend, for the helplessness of the conclusion that she was right. I collapsed on the couch, and watched as the hills swayed in the night. Let's have the last glass and I'm leaving. She said to me. After I give you this, and that part of you disappears, will you remember that you are not, really Valeria? No. There is already a simulation on pause about Valeria's last week. She won't remember anything about this situation when she wakes up, because the memory is simply overwritten. So I'm going to be the only one to know about this. Take it as a gift, Moro, a glimpse behind the veil. And if you keep it that way, everything will be fine. The threatening tone was soft but evident. Okay, hand me your PC and the flash drive. I looked at her, evaluating all possible actions and if this decision was the right one. She stretched out her hand and smiled sympathetically. I gave her the old computer and the black 16G flash drive with the file. She inserted it, typed mechanically fast until the screen went black. Perfect, that would be all. She took out the flash drive, threw it on the floor and stepped on it violently with the heel of her shoe, put on his backpack and headed for the door. Stop, I said. The things that Dr. B wrote, about the underground. Yes, they are true. It was the only way to be self-sustainable and to be able to isolate the complex from the rest of the world. Even the most morally flexible scientists would question the work if they knew where the subjects ended up, and what we were doing with their bodies. Anyway, I'm going home. Lucia called me 5 times already. Talk to you tomorrow. Love you. She smiled at me and closed the door behind her. I felt a car slowly drive away from the house. From my pocket I took out the white flash drive and looked at it. Now I had a decision to make.